Honorable Member for District 2.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes be amended on page 1 to reflect the apologies of absence for Madam Speaker for the sitting of the 20th of February 2020.
I beg to second the amendment to the minutes.
I put a vote that the minutes of the third meeting of the first session of the second Anguilla Youth Parliament be amended. Those in favor? Aye. Those against?
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the third meeting of the first session of the second Anguilla National Youth Parliament be approved as amended.
I beg to second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The minutes of the third meeting of the first session of the second Anguilla Youth Parliament be confirmed as amended.
Oaths of allegiance, none. Announcements by the direction of the Speaker.
Good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone here today to the fourth meeting of the first session of the second Anguilla Youth Parliament. It is an honor to have you here with us today as we conduct business and celebrate the 6th annual Youth Week in Anguilla. The atmosphere in the house today is one of promise. It emphasizes the theme of this year's Youth Week, Vision 2020, co-creating sustainable futures for Anguilla. Youth across Anguilla are proving that we deserve a seat at the table, that our voices matter, and that Anguilla cannot progress forward without our inclusion. The members of the Youth Parliament have been working tirelessly to bring matters to the House that are evidently important to us as youth and important to the people of Anguilla in charting the way forward for a sustainable future. We believe that we must all hold ourselves accountable in trying to achieve this vision, and we ask the leaders of this land to do the same. The task of a parliamentarian is not an easy feat, but we sit here committed to the development of youth and to the development of our country. On behalf of the Anguilla Youth Parliament, I would like to congratulate the 11 elected members that have been put forth to lead this land. We wish both the new ministers of government and the members of the opposition every success in the upcoming 5 years and beyond. We would also like to thank the previous government and opposition members for their support and guidance throughout our first year. The Anguilla Youth Parliament in the upcoming month will be restructuring our legislative assembly to mimic the current House of Assembly of Anguilla. We will be increasing our opposition to reflect the 4 members that now sit in the House of Assembly. With that being said, I would like to announce that we will be recruiting persons to fill those positions. More information on this will be circulated via another medium. We would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Government of Anguilla and the Department of Youth and Culture on the execution of another successful Youth Week, which started on the 27th of May and is due to end on the 3rd of October. Us parliamentarians have been privileged to have participated in several events during this week. This includes working on the development of the new youth policy for Anguilla by taking part in the National Youth Conference held on Monday and Tuesday, the straight-up conversations with the elected members, and the roundtable discussion with His Excellency the Governor. It would be remiss of me if I did not mention one of the highlights of Youth Week, the National Youth Awards, where some of my fellow youth parliamentarians, the elected member for District 3, and the Deputy Governor are nominees. This event is scheduled to take place on 3rd October at the Teachers Resource Center at 6 p.m. In closing, I would like to remind the members of Parliament of a few rules of the debate. Debates should be good-tempered and never personal. You should not interrupt any member while speaking by using disorderly expressions or noises, and the ruling of the speaker is final. Thank you.
Apologies for absences.
The elected member of District 7 has sent her apologies of absence for this 4th meeting of the 1st session of the Anguilla Youth Parliament.
Papers, none. Reports from committees, none. Petitions, none. Government notices, none. Unofficial notices, none. Questions, none. Motions. Motion 3 of 2020. The implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla.
Honorable Member for District 3.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the motion in the matter of a mental health policy being one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla. Whereas health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, mental health is indispensable. And whereas mental illness is becoming increasingly prevalent and is accompanied by damaging and real issue of stigma, and whereas experts predict that the number of persons with mental disorders in the Caribbean will increase by more than 50% due to increase in age, a progressively polluted political environment, climate change, economic and social decline. And whereas, due to the current economic state, the Anguillan population may not be able to afford access to proper mental health care. And whereas the international conventions on mental health and human rights have been developed, therefore the appropriateness of the legislature should be assessed. And whereas there is no resident psychiatrist, no separate mental health facilities, and the multidisciplinary team is disjointed, which does not allow for all individuals to receive proper mental health support. And whereas there is some evidence to suggest that suicide and self-harm is a public health issue in Anguilla, and there is no suicide prevention plan in place. And whereas poor mental well-being of employees has a negative impact on the economic productivity of businesses in the same way as physical health does. And whereas research has shown that 70% of mental health issues in children and adolescents would not have had suitable interventions at an early enough stage. And whereas the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals includes a target for reducing premature mortality for non-communicable diseases through prevention, treatment, and promotion of mental health and well-being. Now, therefore, being resolved that the Anguilla Youth Parliament, number 1, calls upon the government of Anguilla to implement a mental health policy for Anguilla. 2, calls on the government of Anguilla to allocate the necessary resources for phased implementation of the mental health policy. And 3, calls on the government of Anguilla to invest in the training of mental health professionals.
Honorable Member for District 2.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second this motion.
Honorable Member for District 4.
Madam Speaker, as a point of information, I would like to make it clear that all members of government are free to vote their conscience.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 4. Member for District 3.
Madam Speaker, I would firstly like to welcome everyone to the House of Assembly today for this sitting of Anguilla's Youth Parliament. It is important that we as youth not only have our voices heard, but also encouraged, which was seen throughout this week. To begin, according to the World Health Organization, health is defined as the complete social, physical, and mental well-being of an individual. As you can see, there's no health without mental health. We, as humans, have a duty to improve our health. And in order to improve our health, we have to understand what is causing human death. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 800,000 persons die from suicide every year. That is an average of one suicide every 40 seconds. Therefore, it can be estimated that in the time frame that we are here in this sitting, there will be approximately 180 persons dead from suicide. By the way, there's no suicide prevention plan in place in Anguilla. However, if we were to look further into our global health status, dying is a health problem. However, dying is not the only health problem. There are health problems that keeps people from living healthy, productive lives. There are health problems that keep people from contributing to the betterment of society. When we look at health problems, we commonly look at death rates. For example, heart disease is the leading cause of death globally. However, heart disease commonly only affects the older population. And if we're being completely honest, the older population are more prone to death. If we were to look at the years lost to diseases that have a disabling effect or causes early death, diseases such as malaria becomes much more prevalent as it affects the younger population. For example, someone at the age of 65 dying from heart disease have only lost 10 years compared to the average life expectancy. But someone dying at the age of 25 because of malaria or even suicide have lost 50 years compared to the average life expectancy. Think about the amount of years lost due to depression or anxiety or any other mental illness. Think about the years lost, not only when someone dies, but years lost due to the debilitating effect of mental illness. The biggest shift you see when looking at the burden of disease is that of mental illness and substance abuse, which in the United States becomes the biggest disease burden, beating even cancer. This does not only apply to the United States. This applies to the UK, France, China, even as close as Brazil. Mental illness causes more disease burden than any other non-communicable disease. And individuals with mental disorders are more likely to have a shorter life expectancy compared to the general population. When we look at the years lost due to mental illness, it is obvious that healthcare, especially mental health care, should be a priority for every country's healthcare system. It is a challenge to get proper mental health care in first world countries. It is even more of a challenge in the Caribbean, and especially even more of a challenge in Anguilla. In fact, many years ago, it was a common practice to keep the disabled, the mentally ill, locked away in a back room, far away from everyone else, isolated, unable to see the rest of Anguilla. The psychiatric unit was only built in the 90s. We still do not have a resident psychiatrist. We have one that visits once a month. However, that is not even possible anymore due to COVID-19. We have a population of over 15,000 citizens, but only one government clinical psychologist. How is it possible for a population of over 15,000, we have only hired one government clinical psychologist? Our Mental Health Act looks at the mentally ill as if they are crazy or like if they are criminals, when in fact, the mentally ill are mostly nonviolent and are more likely to be the victims of crime. As John Green once said, mental illness is not some punishment from up above. It's a side effect of having a body. And no, thinking positive will not help. Madam Speaker, the opposition may try to argue that have a psych unit attached to our hospital, that a psychiatrist that sometimes visits Anguilla, and one government clinical psychologist is better than none. Madam Speaker, whenever someone tells you what you have is better than none, what you have is not enough. We need to make mental health a priority to ensure that our citizens are able to function fully and contribute to the betterment of Anguilla. And making it a priority is a lot better than doing nothing or doing one thing or doing a few things. It's better than writing a policy that is never to be touched. Madam Speaker, we do not just write policies to say that we write a policy. We do not write policies just to say that we've done our job. That's like a teacher giving a student a textbook and saying that they teach. Furthermore, according to the World Health Organization AIMS report done in 2009, Anguilla has had a mental health policy approved since 2005. We are now in 2020. 15 years later, and we have yet to implement a mental health policy. Madam Speaker, that is just ridiculous. Policies are made to be implemented, and policies that have anything to do with the health of our citizens should always be a priority. In multiple sources, such as the World Health Organization, Hopkins Medicine, UK's Mind Organization, and more, they all estimate that 1 in 4 adults suffer from a mental disorder. Also, according to an article called The Mental Health in the Caribbean, the Silent Epidemic, the number of persons with mental disorders in the Caribbean is projected to increase by more than 50% by 2020, with more than 80 of these people having no access to mental health care. This in no way shows a sustainable future for Anguilla. These statistics are scary, but the good thing is most mental health disorders and mental health issues are treatable, and you do not even need to be diagnosed to get help. Therefore, if we made the implementation of a mental health policy one of the highest priorities for the government, we as a nation strive to be better than these statistics. Additionally, in Anguilla, we avoid talking about mental health, and those who do are constantly looked down upon. The clearest sign of how little we talk about mental health is how we only talk about it when something happens, like when someone kills themselves, or after a devastating event like Hurricane Irma or COVID-19, or even during election time. There is a damaging stigma that is associated with mental health in Anguilla, and I do not only mean calling the mentally ill crazy. Yes, that is a problem, but the problem is much more deeply rooted than that. We refuse to talk about mental health as a community, and therefore many persons suffer in silence, afraid to reach out and get help. How can we, as a country, consider ourselves to be strong and resilient when we cannot even talk about mental health? Madam Speaker, the opposition may try to make you believe that this policy is a waste of time, a waste of money, but a policy is used to mobilize and enforce the importance of an issue. The Mental Health Act is just the skeleton, but the policy is the engine that makes it move. And funding will always be needed for that. To quote a piece from the Economist, nobody spends enough on mental health. We need to find ways to fund mental health care, not just because it makes economic sense, but because it saves lives. And I do not only mean lives lost due to suicide. I mean the lives that are ruined by mental illness, the lives that are unable to get out of bed every morning. I'm talking about saving those lives as well. Of course, we as a country want to be financially stable. However, being financially stable will not matter if our citizens are not healthy. Therefore, we as a nation have to come together to implement this mental health policy and advocate for a healthier Anguilla. Because remember, there's no health without mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 3. Honorable Member for District 4, you may now approach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, all. I would like to start by thanking all attendees, radio listeners, and members for being here with us today. I am honored to be here to discuss the implementation of a mental health policy being one of highest priority for the government of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, the island of Anguilla encapsulates a very unique culture, one of love, joy, and unity. But our culture and/or societal norms have also crippled a suffering demographic. Every day, people suffering from poor mental health struggle to receive help and/or even vocalize the presence of a disorder. Severe mental health cases are typically disregarded for and left untreated, simply to be branded as crazy. As a result, many mental disorders on Anguilla are left undiagnosed, unreported, untreated, and in turn, understudied. Very few studies have been done to understand rates and associated disorders for Anguilla, but a recent study conducted in St. Kitts and Nevis found that 62.1% of those surveyed reported some symptoms of poor mental health, while an alarming 24.5% reported moderate to severe symptoms of depression. Keep in mind, this is an island less than 65 miles from our shores. I say this to draw attention to the fact that although Anguillan statistics on mental health are poorly recorded, discussed, and assessed, mental health is still a prevalent and ever-growing concern for the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, the people of Anguilla are by far its greatest resource, and therefore their health and their well-being should be of top priority. Understandably, the proper implementation of the mental health policy will not be cheap, but such an investment in the people of Anguilla will change the overall mental state of the island, boosting productivity and creating a much larger, more capable, and more motivated workforce. Of course, not forgetting outside of the workforce, where we have our senior citizens and students. Pertaining to our senior citizens, dementia is marked by a memory impairment and a difficulty with processing thoughts and information. As life expectancy continues to increase in the Caribbean, it can also be expected that the prevalence of this condition will increase as well. A Cuban study indicated that roughly 10% of persons over the age of 65 suffer from dementia. Anguilla, with one of the highest life expectancies in the Caribbean, raises some concern for our senior citizens. As a country, our senior citizens are a wealth of knowledge and culture that we need to cherish and honor. As such, Madam Speaker, the implementation of a mental health policy should be one of highest priority. As for the youth of Anguilla, I have a special sense of sympathy and responsibility, as the youth demographic is naturally the one I am most familiar and relatable with. The youth of Anguilla aren't in an environment that cares for and/or acknowledges their mental status. And through countless discussions among these same peers, I've learned that the simplicity of what I am doing now, public speaking, is near impossible for some Anguillan youth who suffer from severe anxiety. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that I don't get nervous or that public speaking is by any means easy, but this is where a clear difference is made. A mental disorder is diagnosable after it's prevalent for 2 weeks and disables your ability to live normally. With that being said, there's nothing wrong with having a bad day or feeling sad or stressed, because they are all normal things that we go through in life. But when it starts to affect your everyday life, the problem begins. Overall, mental health in Anguilla is a stigmatized topic with serious effects on all of its people. Once we outgrow our preconceived notions and walk towards the hastily implementation of a mental health policy, the people of Anguilla can begin to heal and grow as a happier, more productive, and more socially inclusive island. I thank you.
Honorable Member for District 2.
Madam Speaker, I gratefully adopt the protocol that has already been established. Today, I rise in full strength before this honorable House to support the vote which read as follows. The implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla. This is a revolutionary topic, yet sadly shines a blinding light on our current heart-shattering reality. In my humble yet critical opinion, this topic is one of utmost importance for the youth and people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, let us forget about statistics for a minute. A wise man once said, teach that most people will suffer with mental health issues at some point in time in their life. And if they do not, they will know someone who does. Teach that it is not only important to talk about our own feelings, but to ask others if they are okay too. Madam Speaker, from a young age, I have been struggling with mental health issues, mainly depression and anxiety. Every time before I speak, it feels like I am having a heart attack. And I'm sure some of you all can relate. Anxiety is not always noticeable because it is an inward feeling. Honestly, it makes you feel like you are malfunctioning, not having the ability to process what you are saying. Madam Speaker, then you will realize my Spanish station has turned on, and all I can hear is, Taisha, slow down. You are speaking too fast. Although I may look completely normal on the outside, it is like, what can I do to control what is happening to me right now? But nevertheless, Madam Speaker, if it calls for me to put myself in uncomfortable spaces to represent the youth of Anguilla, I am willing and ready to do so. Madam Speaker, I am sick and tired of hearing, are you turned too young to be stressed? Or you have not experienced being an adult as yet. Or no te pasa nada. Madam Speaker, it does not matter what language or dialect you speak. It is far too often mental health issues are overlooked throughout our Caribbean society. Madam Speaker, we need to break the stigma of believing that you cannot experience mental health issues at a young age. We need to break the stigma of believing because you may be a positive person, an established person within our communities, you are okay. Mental health issues are not always noticeable. Secondly, Madam Speaker, COVID-19 have tested the mental health of our youth and people here in Anguilla. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a monetary decline in our economy, a rapid increase of unemployment, and the restriction of movement, which have had a major impact on our people's mental state. Madam Speaker, according to an article written by Sebastian Trutman entitled The Economic Cause of Mental Disorders, poor mental well-being of employees have a negative impact on the economy productivity of its business in the same way physical health does. Madam Speaker, people are central to development. If we do not develop our people, we will not see any benefits from any economic activities. Madam Speaker, if we mistreat our labor force, we will not receive any loyalty from them. It is our role as policymakers and administrators to ensure that we develop our human resources, as economic development and human development gives you sustainable development. And I know sustainable development is what we as Anguillians would like to see. Madam Speaker, if we have healthy workers, employers are less likely to have employees asking for sick leave, and therefore their business will benefit greatly. It is important that we look out for our human resources, because if we don't, employers cannot enhance economically. If we want to develop, we need to address the basic needs of our population. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, we need to understand that times and the accessibility to technology have played a role in the behavioral patterns of this generation. Although there's a hotline available for persons who are affected by mental health issues, we know that persons are not using it due to confidentiality reasons. Most persons may say that this is pride, but according to the Honorable Parliamentary Secretary, Mrs. Quincy Gumsbury, pride is a response to shame, and that is not how we should classify our people. With the policy in place, there will be a contractual agreement that both parties have to sign in efforts to gain the trust of our society. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, during my years at the Albino Lake Arch Comprehensive School, I have seen a change in behavioral patterns that Madam Speaker. I have seen a change in behavioral patterns and the increase of violence. Madam Speaker, these unfortunate events have not only affected the students involved, but the majority of the school population. Madam Speaker, there is a saying, our environment makes us who we are, which can partly be true, but our mental health plays a big role in the way in which we retaliate. Lastly, Madam Speaker, if time permits me, I would like to congratulate all the student councils of the primary school for the amazing leadership they have displayed. Madam Speaker, if you take a look around the room, you realize that all members of Parliament and student council are wearing a green ribbon. Green ribbons are used to spread mental health awareness. Although International Mental Health Day is on the 10th of October, the Student Council of the Albino Lake Arch Comprehensive School saw the need to represent and advocate the opinion and interests of the student population. With that remark, I would like to wish success to the Student Council of the Albino Lake Arch Comprehensive School on the execution of their Mental Health Week, which will commence on the 12th of October to the 16th of October 2020. In addition, Madam Speaker, Russell Wilson said, and I quote, "If we start being honest about our pain, our anger, and our shortcomings, instead of pretending that they do not exist, then maybe we will leave the world a better place than we found it," end quote. Madam Speaker, I would like to close by saying, We all have a role in making Anguilla a better place. And with that, I am asking that you start by altering your tone, choice of words, and gestures when you are communicating. As Minister of Home Affairs and Education, I stand resolute in believing that the implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla, as it will be in the best interest of the youth and people of Anguilla. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 2. Honorable Member for District 6.
Madam Speaker, a wise person once said, "There is no health without mental health." With this being the case, I have no choice but to ask, why is such a crucial issue such as mental health near the bottom of the priority list? All one has to do is look at the widespread effect of mental health issues, its increasing prevalence due to the current economic and social climate, and how few facilities are currently in place for it, in order to realize that this issue cannot be neglected any longer. Madam Speaker, it does not take a rocket scientist to realize that mental health issues have negative effects. These issues hinder people and the economy at large in a multitude of ways. The aforementioned quote, "There is no health without mental health," is not only for show. For an individual, mental health issues can plague every aspect of their life, from making them less productive, worsening their relationships with others, and in strong cases, leading them to self-harm and even suicide. Most mental health issues are far different from the average cold or flu. It is not going away in a few days, and bush tea will not help. Additionally, studies show that persons with mental health disorders are more likely to be victims of crime. As for the effects on the economy, a high prevalence of mental health issues greatly diminishes the workforce, similar to a widespread outbreak of an illness, making the already undesirable economic climate even worse. Unlike most common illnesses, however, Madam Speaker, a few days of sick leave is far from an end-all, be-all solution. The difficulty for businesses to tackle mental health issues make the effects far more severe. Madam Speaker, how can the opposition argue that an issue with so many negative effects not be one of the highest priorities? To compound on this, Madam Speaker, presently in Anguilla, the economic and social climate could not possibly get much worse. With a pandemic stifling the economy, making job opportunities far more scarce than they already were, and separating many Anguillians from their loved ones abroad, it would be hard for us to avoid being afflicted with mental health issues. This is only made worse when one considers that we are still in an economic recession. Madam Speaker, the crystal clear truth is that many Anguillians are concerned about how they're going to make ends meet and the survival of their loved ones overseas. This, however, is only the tip of the iceberg, Madam Speaker. A study done in Barbados during 2017 displayed that the number of people with mental health disorders was projected to increase by more than 50% by 2020. Note well, Madam Speaker, that this was before the pandemic and before Hurricane Irma. One could only imagine how high this percentage has skyrocketed since. Let us now put these statistics into perspective. Studies in the UK and America show that 26% of citizens between the ages of 18 and 24 suffer from common mental health issues, such as anxiety and depression. Using this baseline as an estimate for Anguilla, factoring in the 50% increase by 2020, this would increase the percentage to 39%, a mere 11% off of 50. This alarming percentage is most likely even higher due to the aforementioned hurricane and pandemic. Do not think that this issue is only limited to that age group. An article entitled Mental Health in the Caribbean, The Silent Epidemic by Rebecca Theodore highlights that over 80% of people with mental health issues will not be able to access help in the Caribbean. Moreover, Madam Speaker, it is absurd how few mental health facilities and systems are currently in Anguilla. At the present moment, there is not a single resident psychiatrist and only one government-hired psychologist and one private psychologist. Yes, you heard right, Madam Speaker. For a population of over 15,000 people, there are only 2 psychologists. To make matters worse, the government-hired psychologist is totally disjointed from the health authority. Additionally, there is no well-defined process for persons suffering from mental health issues to get help. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, despite the fact that many mental health issues originate from one's home or are made worse in one's home, there is no proper facility for inpatients. Madam Speaker, it is hard to say that Anguilla even has the bare minimum. So how can it then be concluded that the implementation of a mental health policy should not be one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla? Madam Speaker, I should not be able to find a basketball court every 5 minutes of driving, while it is impossible to find more than one mental health facility. Something with a positive side effect is not the same as a dedicated facility. Overall, Madam Speaker, it is evident that due to the slew of negative effects mental health issues have, its increased prevalence due to the current social and economic climate, as well as the abysmal number of facilities and systems in place to combat these issues, I have no choice but to wholeheartedly agree with the motion. The implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for District 6. Any other members wish to debate the motion? First nominated member. Second nominated member, sorry.
Madam Speaker, after decades of tiptoeing around the topic of mental health in Anguilla, it is an honor to stand here this afternoon and discuss the topic that has finally come to light. There is no doubt that Anguilla lacks the basic mental health facilities, including mental health professionals, and I am not here to deny that. However, it is the opposition's belief that there are higher priorities which need to be attacked by the government, and once attacked, will consequently improve the lack of mental health facilities in Anguilla. It is for this reason that I oppose the motion the implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, the proposition has made it clear that the implementation of the mental health policy in Anguilla needs to occur. Yet, they have avoided the question as to why has it not been implemented. And the answer is quite simple: lack of funding. Which is why I firmly believe that economic development should be of the highest priority to the government of Anguilla. In times such as these, on an island which depends heavily on tourism during the COVID-19 pandemic, our economy is already struggling. Madam Speaker, the implementation of this mental health policy is asking for a resident psychiatrist, separate mental health facilities, and a multidisciplinary team. However, how can we implement this when we cannot even afford it as yet? The reality is that this will cost thousands of dollars. According to the website Glassdoor, which gives an overview of employment and international salaries, the average base pay of a resident psychiatrist is $204,271 a year. Building separate mental health facilities and the hiring, and most importantly, importing of mental health professionals will be even more expensive. This government's current priorities revolve around the economy, as it should in these difficult times, and their main priority is developing a medium-term economic and fiscal plan. In order to afford resources to benefit mental health in Anguilla, they must continue to prioritize this and any other plans that can benefit the economy. Additionally, a terrifying educated estimate of 3,000 jobs have been lost this year in Anguilla due to the coronavirus pandemic. In an article entitled Influence of Unemployment on Mental Health of the Working Age Population by medical professionals Olivia Batik, Samir Porik, and Nurika Pendrick states that, and I quote, "The consequences of unemployment are not only intrapersonal, such as an impact on subjective well-being and mental health. Unemployment also leads to interpersonal consequences, that is, the hidden and often overlooked social processes that affect unemployed people's social well-being. The harmful effects of unemployment, especially long-term unemployment, on mental health are well documented. Numerous studies showed that the unemployed have poorer mental health than the employed. The proposition must not overlook the fact that unemployment is a common cause of mental health issues. If the government prioritizes the economy and industries, then jobs will be created, whether in the hospitality sector or otherwise. For example, why do you think the government is proposing the building of the marina in Sandy Ground? Despite the opposition to its existence, that's for economic development, a generator of jobs that is of high priority to the government for now. Madam Speaker, as a matter of fact, once the economy is stable, then the government can prioritize scholarships for the Anguillan youth so that our young people can be sent off to universities and return as mental health professionals. You see, the opposition, we believe in thinking about the future. What is the point of implementing a policy if we cannot afford to maintain it, fully develop it, or even hire professionals? Madam Speaker, this is why developing new industries should be highly prioritized as well, so that the people of Anguilla can be employed once again, and everyone can have an improved quality of life in regards to health, housing, and resources. Now, money does not solve every problem, but it does improve the quality of life, and in the long term will help to create a stable solution for the mental health problem in Anguilla. Madam Speaker, even if we make it out of here today with mental health as a higher priority than the economy, employment, and other factors that will sustain and improve mental health facilities for a long period, we should not, and I repeat, should not, put the implementation of this policy at the top of our list. Instead, we should be altering the Mental Health Act that already exists in Anguilla. How many times have we heard the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Well, Madam Speaker, this act is broken, and this act needs to be fixed. Madam Speaker, in a discussion with the Youth Parliament's governor, Mr. Neil Gums, he told us that, and I quote, "The act is the skeleton, and the policy is the body," unquote. Madam Speaker, how can a body function with a broken skeleton? How can a policy operate properly without a revised act? This is why we need to alter the language used in the Mental Health Act and review it while modernizing it to address the current mental health issues in Anguilla. And now that we have become aware that having a mental illness does not equate to being crazy, our act should reflect the same thing. Madam Speaker, the fact that Anguilla already has a mental health policy that has not been implemented should tell us something. So, if we have to prioritize aspects directly related to mental health, let us first prioritize altering the act. Madam Speaker, to conclude this debate, I am not denying the fact that mental health problems in Anguilla should be addressed. However, the government should prioritize other areas such as economic development, employment, and new industries over implementing the mental health policy. We always talk about sustainable development, and as previously mentioned, once our economy is secured, then in the long term, we can develop mental health facilities and implement policies that will not only benefit Anguillians today or tomorrow, but for decades. Additionally, a simple revision of the Mental Health Act should be what we prioritize and discuss, because without a firm skeleton, we cannot have a functioning body. Madam Speaker, it is for these key reasons that I rise to oppose the motion. The implementation of a mental health policy in Anguilla should be one of the highest priorities of the government. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, second nominated member. Elected member for District 5.
Madam Speaker, pleasant good afternoon to all. Thank you for coming and allowing me to share my opinion on the resolution in the matter of the implementation of a mental health policy being one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla. According to mentalhealth.gov, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood to adolescence through to adulthood. Mental illness, also called mental health disorders, refer to a wide range of mental health conditions, disorders that affect our mood, our thinking, and our behavior. Examples of mental illnesses include depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, eating disorders, and addictive behaviors. According to mayoclinic.org, some contributors to the development of mental illness include biological factors, such as genes, life experiences such as trauma and abuse, and family history of mental problems. Over the past year so far, arguably in Anguilla, there have been two major contributors to mental health issues, and that's between 2017 and 2020. Those would include Hurricane Irma of 2017 and the current pandemic, COVID-19. It may seem as though the nightmare of Irma was such a long time ago due to the way that Anguilla has recovered, but the hurricane still lives on in the minds of most of our citizens. Vivid images of roofs flying and having to hide in your bathtub as to not be blown into the storm. Madam Speaker, wouldn't these just scar you for life? You may be able to move on, but the memory will always be there. This equates to trauma, a mental condition caused by severe shock, especially when the harmful effects last for a long time. Even after the hurricane passed and its followers, Maria and Jose, we were still caught up in the devastation left behind. For months, we were without electricity and our houses were in ruins, galvanized roofs scattered throughout the island, and the trees so bare it looked as if there was a wildfire. So even after the citizens of Anguilla and neighboring islands had to deal with the tragedy of the hurricane, they also had to deal with picking the island back up immediately afterwards. Although Anguillians showed great resilience and strength, this could make trauma worse. A study was conducted in April 2007 by Mary Alice Mills, Donald Emonson, and Crystal L. Park. In this study, they monitored the effects of Hurricane Katrina on people whose ages ranged from 21 and older in New Orleans. In this study, the sample took surveys on their life from their daily life activities and how they were functioning from days 12 to 19 after the storm. The results were shocking. Common evacuee healthcare concerns included poor sleep quality, depressed immune functioning, increases in negative health behaviors, for example, alcohol and cigarette use, and elevated relapse rates for pre-existing health conditions. More than 50% of the evacuees will experience persistent and severe psychological consequences. Given the mental health repercussions of Hurricane Katrina projected to emerge in the coming years, including depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, Physician and healthcare provider familiarity with the trauma-related symptoms and differential risk profiles is crucial. This proves that hurricanes can leave mass trauma, and it hasn't been addressed. Madam Speaker, global warming is increasingly getting worse. As a result, our hurricanes are becoming stronger as the environment is becoming increasingly warmer. To make matters worse, Anguilla has been a target of these natural disasters since the beginning of time. Therefore, now there is even more of a need for the mental health policy implementation. Another important contributor to the mental health issues is the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19. This virus took the world by storm, spreading its deadly wings and infecting almost every country around the world. So far, there have been around 32.6 million deaths, and as of late, over 1 million deaths. 32.6 million cases. Luckily, Anguilla has had only 3 cases, and due to our quick action and safe practices, we have managed to stop the spread of the disease. But at the same time, what are the effects of staying in for a certain period of time? According to euro.who.org, their article entitled Mental Health and COVID-19 states, as the coronavirus pandemic rapidly sweeps across the world, it is inducing a considerable degree of fear, worry, and concern in the population at large, and among certain groups in particular, such as older adults, care providers, and people with underlying health conditions. In public mental health terms, the main psychological impact to date is elevated rates of stress or anxiety. But as new measures and impacts are introduced, especially in quarantine, levels of loneliness, depression, harmful alcohol and drug use, and self-harm or suicidal behavior are also expected to rise. As stated by the Honorable Member for District 3, there is no current suicide prevention plan in Anguilla. In Anguilla, COVID-19 did not have as big of an impact as it did on other places around the globe, but there was still a considerable amount of fear and what-ifs and uncertainty for the future. For example, what if COVID-19 spreads to Anguilla as we plan to open back up the country? What if we can't import food? What if we can't trade with other islands? What if we cannot comfortably leave the island anymore? These cause worry and fear, and more than anything, this can lead to stress, and therefore people could develop unhealthy coping mechanisms such as alcoholism or overeating. As stated before, mental health is an important aspect of a person's overall well-being. So, Madam Speaker, why isn't it just as important as a person's physical health? Currently in Anguilla, we have not paid as much attention as we should to the mental state of our citizens. Mental health should be one of the government's top priorities at this time. Because of the stigma attached to mental health and mental issues, people aren't as open to the idea of psychologists and counselors. It is a general opinion that mental health isn't as important as physical health is. Every day, mental illnesses such as depression, anxiety, and eating disorders go unnoticed, but it does affect the body. According to Healthline.com, when you feel anxious and stressed, your brain floods your nervous system with hormones and chemicals designed to help you respond to a threat. Adrenaline and cortisol are 2 examples. Anxiety disorders can cause rapid heart rate, palpitations, and chest pain. You may also be at an increased risk of high blood pressure and heart disease. If you already have a heart disease, anxiety disorders may increase the risk of coronary events. That was only the nervous system and cardiovascular system, but it also can affect your immune system, excretory system, digestive system, and respiratory system. May also cause headaches, muscle tension, insomnia, depression, and social isolation. Madam Speaker, doesn't this just sound like a serious issue? And just imagine that this is one out of the many possible mental disorders that the people are experiencing right now in Anguilla. Madam Speaker, I believe that the motion, implementation of a mental health policy being one of the highest priorities for the government of Anguilla, is one of most importance. And that for all of these reasons and more, the mental state of our citizens should be held in higher regard, especially at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 5. First nominated member.
Madam Speaker, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to share my views on the resolution. Implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities for the Anguillan government. Mental illness itself occurs from the interaction of multiple genes and other factors, such as stress, abuse, or traumatic events. A good mental health is essential for living life to the fullest. Emotional and mental health is important because it is a vital part of our life and impacts your thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Being healthy emotionally can promote productivity and effectiveness in activities like work, school, or caregiving. Mental illnesses can also severely impact your day-to-day life. There are many different types of mental health illnesses, for example, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, etc. These are examples of illnesses that also may be in Anguilla that people may not know of. There is no rehabilitation center in Anguilla, and we are also lacking medical help in this field of work. This is the case because of the lack of funding which Anguilla has to supply for our rehabilitation center. I truly think that the mental health policy should be in place because it will ensure that the people of Anguilla have wonderful mental health. When and if Anguilla's policy is in place, people will have more information on the topic at hand. They will understand the need to take a break once in a while. Personally, I feel as if mental health should be one of Anguilla's main concerns due to the coronavirus pandemic and tragic incidents from the past. Even though Anguilla is corona-free, Anguilla's main industry is tourism. And with lockdown and quarantining, I can assure you that no one is traveling to take a vacation. Madam Speaker, I can assure you that people who work in the hospitality industry currently are unemployed. With this in mind, some people worry about what their next meal may be and stress over bills which they have to pay. With all these problems that they face, it can cause stress. Stress may cause hypertension, and that is the most common disease that Anguillians suffer from. Mental health services also reduce the risk of chronic diseases related to stress, anxiety, and substance abuse. Most importantly, mental health services save lives while improving the outlook for others. I think that mental health should be a priority for the Anguillan government. I thank you.
Thank you, first nominated member. Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my fellow colleagues, a pleasant good afternoon. I would like to adopt the protocol that has already been established. Today's motion, and I quote, is the implementation of mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla. Being the Attorney General, given that my debate is mutual, I will be stating some facts about mental health to add along with the ministers of government. Firstly, what is mental health? Mental health deals with a level of psychological well-being and also a state for someone functioning at a level of emotional and behavioral adjustments, and is also an absence from mental illness. There have been several different types of mental health or mental illness that human beings go through, such as anger, suicidal feelings, psychosis, self-esteem, anxiety, panic attacks, bipolar disorder, depression, postnatal depression, and prenatal mental health, just to name a few. According to World Health Organization, WHO, mental health includes suggestive well-being, perceived self-efficiency, autonomy, competence, intergenerational dependence, and self-articulations of one intellectual and emotional potential, among others. Abdominal functioning of nerve cell critics, or pathways that connect particular brain regions, has been linked to mental illness. Nerve cells within these brain critics communicate through chemicals called neurotransmitters. Injuries to certain areas of the brain can contribute to certain mental health problems. To name a few of many causes of mental health or mental illness are genetics, where mental illness sometimes run in families, meaning that people with family members with a mental health problem or problems may likely to be passed on to other members of the family through genes. Infections, where certain infections that has been linked to brain damage and the development of mental illness are the worsening of symptoms. Potential damage, where evidence has stated that a distribution of early frontal brain development or trauma that occurs at the time of birth. For example, loss of oxygen to the brain has been a factor in the development of certain conditions, such as autism spectrum disorder. There has been many ways that people use on a daily basis to help them cope with their mental state, such as self-acceptance, by accepting fully something with your heart and your mind, are coming to terms with the fact that no matter the circumstances that led up to the mental illness, you cannot change the situation. Practicing deep breathing, which is one of the best ways to ease feelings of depression, anxiety, and many other mental health disorders. Practicing mindfulness, which can help you silence those thoughts by focusing on your environment and acknowledging how your five senses are not receiving but also processing the stimulus energy from the external environment. Mental refraining and emotional awareness, which is to combat the negative feelings and emotions that has been often connected to mental health disorders by changing the way we identify with our mental illness. In closing, people with positive mental health realizes their full potential, can work productively and quickly, contribute to their countries meaningfully, and can adapt to problems in life. There has been many people that maintain a positive mental health by learning how to cope, getting proper sleep, helping and socializing with others, staying physically active, keeping a positive mindset, and seeking professional help if needed. So let us help the people of Anguilla. I thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to adopt the protocol already established. Sometimes I wonder why, as a society, not only in Anguilla, but the Caribbean overall, that the topic of mental health is ignored, dismissed, and marginalized. Well, according to Cartwright S.A.'s report on the diseases and physical peculiarities of the Negro race by the New Orleans Medical and Surgical Journal, it turns out that our colonizers deemed our only plausible mental health issue affecting our ancestors was one they call drapetomania, defined as a mental disease of slaves which caused blacks to have an uncontrollable urge to run away from their masters. The only treatment these masters found reasonable? Whipping the devil out of our forefathers. Mental illness was made a mockery of and was not truly recognized by European colonizers, so perhaps the mentality of act normal was adapted as a survival mechanism 300 years ago. However, today it has turned into something that makes us feel like we have to suck it up, face the world with a mask, which is often not in our best interests. While there's a paucity of literature about mental health in the Caribbean, the topic of mental health has been one that our island community has also shied away from for many years. As times have changed, so have awareness and the importance of the discussion on this topic. Plato said, "It is easy to forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is men who are afraid of the light." We can't be afraid of the light, and we can't continue to treat mental health as a pariah. So that we are clear, according to mentalhealth.gov, mental health refers to cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. It is all about how people think, feel, and behave. Mental health issues can stem from either genetic or environmental factors. So our aim then in Anguilla is to destigmatize the notions associated with poor mental health to accompany the implementation of a mental health policy. As we all know, Anguillians are a resilient people. Category 5 hurricane and Category 5 hurricane again, we have proven to be extremely valiant in the restoration process of our country. However, these efforts most certainly did not come without leaving an effect on our people. Those who are not so fortunate during the passage of hurricanes lost almost everything, and despite being able to rebuild their lives in the wake of the tragedy, mentally they are scarred. The fear of losing your roof, your belongings, your job due to the aftermath, and even your life are thoughts that plague the minds of Anguillians when hurricane season rolls around. We might call it just nerves, but post-traumatic stress disorder is triggered by a terrifying event which causes severe emotional distress or physical reactions to something that reminds you of a traumatic event. Being able to put names to what we usually write off as nothing serious is a major step towards combating the nonchalant attitude towards the discussion of mental health. Anguilla's civil service is the largest body of workers and operates as the gears of Anguilla's success. However, the persons working to keep this country running are not machines. They are human and are affected by the stresses and struggles of everyday life. Between straining conflicts in the workplace and at home, employees instinctively do as our ancestors did, act normal and keep it pushing. Ever present is the issue of employees feeling dissatisfied and demotivated because of their current position in life, and finding it stressful and difficult to cope with the job title and work environment. Despite there being high-functioning members of the labor force who are greatly affected by, let's call it what it is, depression, over time, their quality of life and work will increase. A country's success is not measured only by the amount of money it makes, but the quality of life of its people. It's true, we have the best beaches and one of the lowest crime rates in the Caribbean, but Madam Speaker, let me ask you this. If there's an ever-growing problem in our island home, are we not to explore our options to solve it? If there's no direct access to help cope with the mental struggles that may come as part of being a member of the labor force, is the quality of life in our little island that great after all? What good is a stable economy when our human resources are not? Here in Anguilla, we need to move beyond the superficial management of psychosis to more comprehensive identification, treatment, and management of mental well-being. There's not much in place for community mental health, which includes provision of crisis support, protected housing, and sheltered employment, in addition to management of disorders to address the multiple needs of individuals. Community-based services can lead to early intervention and limit the stigma of treatment. They can improve functional outcomes and quality of life of individuals with chronic mental disorders and are cost-effective and respectful of human rights. While Anguilla has made many steps over the years, the newly updated mental health unit, counselors in both the high and secondary schools, correctional service counselors in the Department of Probation and Her Majesty's Prison, and the addition of a clinical psychologist to the Ministry of Social Development, this does not even begin to scratch the surface. As we sit in the middle of the hurricane belt and a global pandemic, more of these services are being demanded. Madam Speaker, to help ensure an estimable quality of life for the citizens in Anguilla, the implementation of a mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. Honorable Member for District 1.
Madam Speaker, I stand before you as the opposition leader, responsible for checks and balances of the government. Madam Speaker, it is clear to me standing here today that the checks have not been done. Madam Speaker, I sat here and listened to some of my colleagues one by one stand there and try to paint a picture of Anguilla as a country that has no regard for the mental health of his fellow man. A picture of an Anguilla with a mental health issue that is not being addressed. But Madam Speaker, what I have not heard, and I've been keeping a keen ear, are facts and statistics. This Honorable House needs to make decisions based on statistics about Anguilla. How are we to assess the need for this policy if we did not first do an assessment of the mental state of Anguilla? National Health Happiness Index, rates of depression, alcoholism, drug abuse. These, Madam Speaker, need to be the basis of what would dictate the priority of such a policy. No, not to say mental health is not an issue in Anguilla, but if we are to vote in this Honorable House that is the top priority of the government, it needs to be shown with numbers. Not statistics about what is happening in the United States, what is happening in Canada and other Caribbean regions. It needs to be based on the needs of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, we have statistics about the importance of addressing COVID-19 and economic development. Yet, this motion moves to pass the priorities for mental health on a foundation of opinions and assumptions. Madam Speaker, in a time where government resources are scarce, it is more critical than ever that we scrutinize every expenditure. You do not make decisions and then assess. You assess and then make decisions. Madam Speaker, I only ask that my colleagues refrain from voting on prioritizing the allocation of government resources for this policy before doing proper due diligence.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 1. Honorable Member for District 3.
Madam Speaker, I would first like to thank the members of government for their very informative speeches. Firstly, the economic development and industry growth are so similar. They are not multiple priority areas. It's just one priority. If you widen the economy, the industries, by chance, you automatically develop the economy further. Also, no one is trying to argue that growing the economy is not important. It is important. However, we commonly lack the conversation about mental health in every aspect of Anguilla life. Madam Speaker, the opposition is trying to tell you that mental health is not important because the economy comes first. That's like saying Black lives matter, but then saying all lives matter. Madam Speaker, one of the main issues in Anguilla and the Caribbean is brain drain. We send our youth away on scholarships, but most of them never come back or come back for a few more years and then leave again. You want to sponsor more scholarships to improve the economy, not realizing that brain drain is a serious and important issue. Madam Speaker, The opposition tried to tell you that we lack statistics and facts. Let me tell you that we had statistics and facts not only from the United States or the UK or China or Brazil. We had statistics from here in Anguilla and the Caribbean. We talk about how the amount of persons with mental disorders in the Caribbean is expected to increase by more than 50% by time 2020, with more than 80% of these having no access to mental health care. We talk about how the psychiatric unit was only built in the 90s. We talk about how there's no psychiatrist that lives in Anguilla, how we have to bring one in every month, and that's not even possible now due to COVID-19. Madam Speaker, the opposition is trying to tell you that the money needed to improve our mental health as an Anguillian. Madam Speaker, the opposition is trying to tell you that the money needed is not what improving the health of our Anguillian citizens. What they refuse to tell you that unemployment is not the only cause of mental illness. Creating more jobs at hotels to survive off of service charge only, having to struggle to get by, having to take a loan to buy a car, that will also lead to financial stress. It doesn't matter if you increase the number of jobs in the hotels. Madam Speaker, the opposition tried to tell you that we do not have funding. However, I would like to take ourselves back a few months ago to the COVID-19 pandemic when it first began. Let me ask you, why did we close our borders? Madam Speaker, we closed our borders for a reason. Anguilla is a country that survives off of tourism. We know closing our borders will severely damage the economy, but yet we did it. Why? Because the health of our Anguillian citizens matters more than money. Why should mental health be any different than any other physical disease? Why should it be better to focus on COVID-19 or cardiovascular disease, but not mental health? Madam Speaker, we also have had an approved mental health policy since 2005. Are you telling me we have not had the money for 15 years, Madam Speaker? This is not a 2020 problem. This is a problem that has been affecting us since Anguilla was a thing, and it will continue to affect us. So we need to stand here today and dedicate our time and money to improving the mental health of our citizens. Madam Speaker, it's not a problem that will just go away if you pray about it. Madam Speaker, we need to prioritize the implementation of a mental health policy in Anguilla as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for District 3. Now that we've heard from all the members of the House, I'll put the question to the House that Resolution 3 of 2020, the implementation of a mental health policy, should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Resolution 3, 2020, the implementation of the mental health policy should be one of the highest priorities of the government of Anguilla, has now become a resolution of this House.
Other businesses?
I'd like to take this time to present a token of appreciation to Mrs. Barbara Webster Bourne on her contribution towards the establishment of the Anguilla Youth Parliament. Mrs. Bourne, can you meet me to the front for a photo opportunity? Mrs. Webster Bourne is also the Speaker of the House of Assembly, in case anyone didn't know. The first Anguilla Youth Parliament would have been established under the chairmanship of the speakership, of Mrs. Webster Bourne, and I see Clemvio in the audience. He would have been the first chief minister of that youth parliament.
Adjournment.
Madam Speaker, I would like to move the motion to adjourn the House until Friday, 20th of November, 3 p.m.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The House now stands adjourned until Friday, 20th November at 3 p.m.